Welcome to GateCrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all nerdy things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. I'm your host, RJ Durante. I use the pronouns he, him, and we have a surprise for you. Our guest today is a triple threat: writer, actor, and comedian. His first taste of internet fame began at Dartmouth, where he was part of the viral video Drinkin' Time, which, yes, I have seen. This path led him to College Humor, where he served as head article editor, cast member, head writer of College Humor Originals, and VP of Creative for Dropout. Memorable standouts from his time there include Breaking News, Ultra Mechatron Team Go, and WTF 101. There is much more to say, but not enough time to do it. So as we pull all this info from our guest's own website, we ask the question: is this person even real? Actually, it's Mike Trapp. Trapp,
Hello.
thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me on.
And it is a beautiful day to have you on as well. Where are we at right now? Are we in California? Are we?
Yes, I'm in LA. It's a gray, overcast day, but that's actually kind of a novelty here. So like it feels nice. It's like, ooh, it's a little cozy. It's getting a little bit of chill in here. It's like, oh, I can put on a hoodie and feel a little nice. So yeah, it's great.
I was just gonna say I noticed the hoodie, so it's hoodie weather. That's the best weather.
It is for, I mean, the caveat being like it's hoodie weather for LA, which means that it's only 75 degrees in the morning. You know what I mean? It's the kind of thing where it's like it's totally normal, but the novelty of it is so nice that it's like, I'm gonna put this on, feel good.
Comfort weather, as we like to call it.
Yes.
So jumping right in, this is our favorite question to ask, and it's also our first question. What is your favorite sandwich?
Starting with the hard ones. Yeah, I mean, like, asking me to choose a favorite sandwich is kind of like asking me to choose a favorite child, I guess. I love them all so much. And also, like, I mean, the real answer for a lot of these things is like, I kind of don't believe in favorites as like a
Mm-hmm.
general thing. Uh, um, like choosing one thing is always like, it's like, well, this feels like a lie in some way. But I'll also play ball and I'll pick something, which is the bacon, egg, and cheese breakfast sandwich. I'm going to throw a curveball out there with the breakfast sandwich. There's probably sandwiches I like better, but I'm always happy to see a breakfast sandwich. And I have like an emotional attachment to like crappy New York street cart breakfast sandwiches when I was
Mm.
living in New York, and just the sheer ubiquity of them, of being able to go outside and know that at a moment's notice I could throw a couple bucks at someone and get a pretty good sandwich on just about any corner is kind of
Mm-hmm.
unbeatable.
It's definitely the utility sandwich too, because it's
Hmm.
breakfast, lunch, dinner,
Yep.
hangover. And you really, even a bad one similar to pizza is still a pretty decent bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich.
Totally. And you can get one for dirt cheap, which is like, you can also get like a really gussied up one with like, it's
Yeah.
cool, we got a
Mm-hmm.
brioche bun and fancy cheese. It's like, but if it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you just want like the the trash sandwich of just like, it's American cheese and gristly bacon and like on paper, like nothing about it works, but like
Mm-hmm.
putting it all together, like 3-4 bucks, and like it's still deeply satisfying in a way that like touches my soul.
There's never a questionable amount of money for a bacon, egg, and cheese
Yes.
sandwich. So a lot of times when we have people who are very well vested in writing, I like to ask them kind of what got you to the point where you realized that you enjoyed writing, you believed in yourself. I can do this. I want to do this. Like kind of
Hmm.
where did you get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, some of it came from, I guess, like the big shift was when I was in college, because I always liked kind of being a goofball, and like joking around with my friends
Hmm.
and like writing little like for small projects and stuff like that, like nothing serious, but just like kind of side writing that I enjoyed. But it was the kind of thing where I was like, this isn't a real career. Like, you can't act. No one actually does this. That's crazy. Um, and so it wasn't until I went to college and uh, I was in an improv group there, and when I was a freshman, there was a senior who was like, "Yeah, after graduation, I'm going to go out to LA and I'm going to try to do the
Mhm.
entertainment thing." And I was sort of like, "Good luck, buddy. Like, hasn't anyone told
See you
you? Like,
never.
yeah, that never happened. You can't do that. That's a thing that strangers do." And then, like, within a couple months, truly, he was like, got an email from him. It was like, "Yeah, things are going great out here. I'm writing for this TV show. I'm on this like house team at the UCB. I'm writing for The Onion." And I was like, "Oh, people I know can do this," and it suddenly made it like much more real and tangible. Um,
Mhm.
and so like that was like beyond just like anything personal with my own work and my own writing, just the sort of realization that um, that it was possible, that it wasn't just like this total like luck of the draw lottery thing was like a big shift in my mind. And so it was like from there I kind of went like, well, maybe I should try to do this too, because it also coincided with like me realizing that like I came into school kind of being like, I'm going to be a bio major, I'm going to get into like like the plan forever was like, yeah, I'll do some like get into like sort of you know m- um, bioengineering and like genetics, like that
Pre-med,
kind. Yeah,
bioengineering, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. And it
It's the
was like,
go-to.
yeah, and it was like almost immediately like, oh no,
This
like
is
I
really hard.
yeah, not even hard. It's just like it's like I realized it was like I like the like the science journal aspect of it. It's like I like reading
Ah.
about this stuff. I like
Mhm.
learning about this stuff. I don't want to sit in a lab and pipette into a thing of gel for hours and get like maybe questionable results and
Yeah.
everything. But I was like, oh, the actual process of doing the science, I don't
Mhm.
really want to do. So it was this sort of this moment where I had to be like, what am I doing? And so like a confluence of things sort of led to this like, well, like I now know people can do this. I've always liked doing it. Um, Let me just sort of like lean full into comedy.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but yeah, and then beyond that, it's sort of like you, like there's I guess a little bit of this question of like imposter syndrome and like how do you get over that? And I don't really know the answer. It requires a little bit of uh uh blind confidence, I guess, of like and like just doing things enough that like when it started it was like, well, I don't think I'm good enough yet, but like I'm just going to keep doing things uh until it feels right. um and yeah, I guess like no one ever stopped me, so I just kept going. um I don't know how you act like, and then yeah, maybe I guess just the persistence to keep going and I hope no one stops you is was sort of enough.
But I think definitely blind confidence, that's gonna be my duo word today, because
Yeah.
that really is. I mean, it's kind of your own self-assurance, and it's also as soon as somebody says you for the first time, "Wow, this is good,"
Uh-huh.
and they say it in that tone where you're like, "Are seriously? Like, is this good? Yes, this is good." Instead of that, "Yeah, this is good." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, you're waiting
um,
for the but. It's like, "This is
yeah,
good, but"
but
what?
so obviously, I mean, writing is a big pastime.
Yeah.
It's something that you continually have to hone your craft. Outside of that, what do you enjoy doing? Are you a guy who likes to cook? Are you a guy who
Mhm.
likes to fish? Like, what's your go-to?
Yeah, my for a long time, my sort of like main side hobby has been cooking, because it is this sort of thing where like if you've got like a little bit of that creative like itch where it's like I want to make
Hmm.
something, but if you've just been banging your head against the keyboard for a while and things aren't quite working, the nice thing about cooking is like if you're paying attention, it's and if you if your standards are as low as mine, you're not like it's really hard to fuck up to the point where it's like I can't eat the thing I just ate. Like you like if you really screw up, if you burn something, totally mess things up, like maybe, but usually it's like okay, I'm gonna take a moment and it won't take me that long, like
Hmm.
an hour at most, and at the end you'll have made something and you get to immediately enjoy it to like immediately like have the fruits of your labor, and which I find very satisfying. um but yeah, aside from that, I do a lot of like hiking, going outside, a lot of stuff, I guess, to kind of like calm me down because I'm a workaholic and
Hmm.
will just sort of uh will work all the time if no one stops me. So I think it's telling that a lot of my hobbies are things. It's like, well, you have to eat, but so you might as well make it fun, and like you have to go outside at some point. So find a way to
Mhm.
make it fun, that kind of stuff.
Well, and that's interesting too, because cooking is one of those things where it's a set of directions, but there's that creativity where you're like, maybe a little more vanilla will
Hmm.
will like peak this up. I also find it funny because every time you go to cook, you're like, I could have my own cooking show. Like this is I'm very good at this. Talking kind of like in that sense of writing and figuring out your hobbies and stuff like that right now is obviously a tough time because you
Mhm.
have to keep yourself busy in one way or another. So how have you kind of been managing through, this pandemic and kind of trying to refocus yourself on, yes, I need to write. Yes, I need to do this. Yes, I need to eat.
Yeah, I mean, I have in truth been writing like a lot during lockdown. More like probably a bad amount. Probably like too much. Probably like an unhealthy amount. But it kind of like lockdown. The lockdown sort of started at a very strange time, because it was the lockdowns here in California were like early March, and
Hmm.
in early January was when the College Humor layoffs were, and like I had been at College Humor for like almost a decade at that point, and was the kind of thing where it's like I hadn't really intended to be there that long. It just sort of like it was
It
comfortable, and
happens.
I liked the people I was working with, and so it was this kind of thing where it's like, all right, like this is sad. Um, but I will take this as an opportunity. Like this is a chance to I'm gonna get pushed out of the nest, and I'm gonna go like find I'm gonna go like break into TV, try to do the things that I always intended to do and just never did. And then
Hmm.
2 months later was like everything is shut down. It's like okay, I guess I'm not doing that. Um, but it was the kind of thing where it's like, well, I can write. I don't need anyone else to write. It's
Hmm.
hard to take meetings. It's hard to um, do that stuff that you require other people for. But as far as like writing a new sample, writing a new script, like it's like I can just sit down and do that myself. And when things are sort of out of control, but like my response is like, well, I'll work my way through it, even though it doesn't have any direct, result on it. So I kind of just like sat down, wrote a script. When that finished, it's like, okay, time to start the next one. So yeah, in 2020, I think I wrote like 4 or 5 scripts, just sort of like cranking them out.
Wow.
TV scripts, so not full
Hmm.
screenplays, but like just pilots of like ideas that I had sitting around forever, and just being like, all right, let me crank out the next one and move on to the next one. So yeah, probably like a frantic, unhealthy level of working where it's like someone's cracking like, what are you doing? Are you writing more? Um, but I think there was also an element of that, like, uh, and I think like a lot of people had this feeling, but this sort of not seriously, but like in the back of your mind, this like dark part of you is like, it's like, did I cause this? Not that you caused it really, but like the number of times I'd said something like, gosh, if I just had a year to just
Do
write, I would
nothing
get
and
so
just be
much done.
stuck.
Yeah. It's like, wouldn't it be like, I swear, like the only thing that's stopping me is that I haven't had the time to do this. And then it was like, it was sort of things like you have no excuse now. It's like you don't have a job anymore. You can't
Hmm.
see anyone. You can't travel anywhere. And it's like you asked for this. Like you said this out loud that you wanted a year to sit and do nothing but write. And it was like if I don't take this time to sit and write, I am the biggest jerk in the world, and it will also like it's like it'll also say something about me where it's like there's something else stopping me from writing. Like
Hmm.
it's not the time. Like if I don't take this time to do it, it's because I'm afraid of it or something. So it's like I kind of just like it's like I have to. There's no excuses now. I have to do this. So it's kind of what I did.
I do like to imagine, God up there in the sky, be like, what did Trap say? Like,
Yeah.
what did, oh, okay. Yeah.
He
Yep,
really wants that?
pandemic.
Okay, like
Okay, yeah.
I don't
Hope
think
you
he's
like
gonna
to
like it,
cook.
but he asked for it. This is the one prayer I answer all year.
Cancer. Nope. Nope.
Yeah,
Lottery.
nope,
Nope.
no,
Oh,
no,
trap.
no.
Here we go. All right, good. Um, so kind of getting into your writing Specifically, I want to talk about actually.
Sure.
Actually, I want to talk about actually. Um, kind of what is your routine when it comes to like the preparation and the production of that? Just because it's really taken off. I it's one of those things where I can bring it up in conversation of people who I might not normally assume, which we shouldn't make assumptions.
Sure.
Might not normally assume would watch it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've seen it." So it's definitely has a wide range. Like how for you getting from kind of script to having three people in front of you and acting as a game show host, how does that happen?
Yeah, so like the bulk of the time is spent with research, honestly. Like writing the questions. In previous seasons, at various points, I've had at least one other person helping me. Lately, in the very beginning, and lately now, it's been like back to like just me. And as the years go on, it just gets harder and harder to write questions because you pluck all the low hanging fruit, and then it's like,
Yeah.
I gotta climb up this tree to get that.
Yeah.
Then you
In
start like
Simpsons
really.
episode 139, we're looking
Yes.
at yeah.
Well, that's just it. Because like when I try to write questions, I want them to be things that are um, that like are not they're not so. I want them like the perfect question is something that like uh that doesn't feel so specific that like you're just totally like lost in the woods. Like
Hmm.
we're not doing like necessarily like deep trivia. It's more of like it's like weird trivia. It's a lot of the stuff that's like I like to start questions from a like the best. I keep like starting over this sentence, but like the best response I can get to when we have a question and you reveal the answer, the best response you can get for me is like, "What? No, shut
Oh.
up." Like something like that. Like you want to have that experience where it's like, I could have sworn that it was something else, and now you've told me
Hmm.
this other thing. I had this misconception about it. And the worst response you can get is just sort of like someone being like, "Oh, okay." It's like, okay, you just changed a noun. So like, I try to start from the point of view of like, oh, here's an interesting piece of trivia, and can I like now rework this in a way that like makes you think that it's true? Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, a lot of time spent finding things that I think can be interesting questions from a wide variety of topics, so that we're not focused on just one thing and topics maybe that like I don't even know that much about. So it's a lot of like deep dives and trying to learn things that I don't already know.
Hmm.
That's the bulk of the time. Once we have the script, it's kind of smooth sailing from there. In that, I mean, shooting the show, it's all beyond the questions. It's all improvised, So it's like
Yeah.
great. Like I've got the questions here. I've got a couch of interesting people, and I tell contestants when they come on the show. I was like, this looks like a game show. It has all the trappings of a game show. There's points, there's questions, but it's really like a talk show and game show close,
Oh
where
yeah.
it's like the questions are an invitation to conversation, and like it's as much about the conversation about the things that we're talking about as it is about the questions themselves. So really, it is just sort of like once we actually like have the questions and we're there, then it's just a chance to feel like you're just hanging out with friends talking about stuff that you like.
And I think that's kind of the thing that a lot of people relate to because it's so reminiscent of just having your friends over and being like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull out Trivial Pursuit. Anybody wanna? And then 9 times out of 10, you're like, no, no, that card's bullshit. Like that's nope, that's not it. But I mean, kind of getting to the guests, you have to have obviously some sort of knowledgeable guest of, and I've read in the past that you kind of see areas of mild expertise that maybe one or two of the guests have, and you kind of try and pull questions there. In terms of guests, like, are there three people out there that you're just like, I'd really like to? And I know we already talked about not picking favorites. We're not
Yeah.
picking favorites, but just three random schmoes coming off the street. Who would you like to walk through the door and be like, actually, sit down?
Yeah, it's really tricky. I've had people ask me before. It's like, oh, who do you really want to be a contestant on the show? And what's tricky about that is that like the people who I think the people that they're like, I think when people ask this question, they're expecting me to say it's like I'd love to have like Patrick Stewart on or something like that,
Yeah. Hmm.
But like in point of fact, I don't necessarily I sometimes like feel feel like we don't want those people because like I'm sure if you're an actor on that show, on like any show that we would talk about, it's like you don't necessarily like want to have your feet held to the fire in like
Mm,
this really like picky trivia. So like you don't necessarily want to be there. Like you'd probably be uncomfortable. Like the best episodes for me are when like everyone is when it is that like it feels like you're just in a friend's living room. You're
yeah.
perfectly comfortable and like we're just gonna talk and joke and have fun. And I feel like if you
Hmm.
have any like a celebrity, like they're just gonna be like a little more buttoned up, a little like more nervous about like how they're gonna perform, what they're gonna say. And so it is
Hmm.
the kind of thing where it's like the people that I would be most excited to meet are not necessarily the people I want
No.
on the show. Um, uh, so like in a weird way, like for me, like I've had on like the people that like I want to have on, which is like, oh, these are my friends. These are friends of friends. These are people who are like legitimately excited to
Hmm.
both talk about this and kind of like playfully rib each other and
Yeah.
make fun of the things we like. Um so in a way, like I've kind of I don't want to say names because then I don't want people to be like, oh wait, you're my favorite contestant. But like in a way, like I've had the people on that I want to have on already.
That's a great response, and I think a lot of it too is you have that age old question of, oh, three people dead or living, who would you invite to dinner with you? I would love to meet these people, but dinner, like that's a 2 hour affair. Like I kind of want to
Yeah.
ask a couple questions. I don't want to sit down and shoot the shit with them. And especially when it comes to something like actually you're spot on,
Yeah.
because if you have somebody, a celebrity who just literally does not know. I mean, if you have somebody from Game of Thrones on and they're like, never read the books, I
Yeah.
did not watch the show, and you have a lot of Thrones heavy questions, people are gonna be like, why is this happening? What's going on here?
Totally.
So
Yeah,
I
that's why
mean,
usually like when we get an opportunity to have someone interesting be involved in the show, I'll usually default to like having them ask a question. Because
mhm,
then it's like, okay, well now you get to be in the position of like it's like we're not gonna like test you and see like how big of a fan you are on your own show, which feels like uncomfortable. Or even like and also like there's such a wide variety of questions on the show. It's like cool, like you play Hodor. That doesn't necessarily mean you know anything about anime. Like it's like there isn't like a link there. So like letting them be the asker of the question is kind of like a fun. It's like, oh, we get to see them. They're
yeah,
talking about their show, but it's like they're being a little more playful, and that feels like a nice compromise to me.
yeah. I'm waiting for the in My Hero Academia
Yeah.
when you just hear Hodor. Yeah, that's I would actually enjoy that. And kind of getting more into actually your board game.
Yes.
It's really, I mean, it took off. The Kickstarter was widely successful, and kind of like, are you looking forward to being in millions of homes and knocking off the Parker Brothers?
No. It I mean, it was very like exciting and humbling to see like how quickly it took off cuz like I yeah, it was like a very like immediate tangible uh bit of evidence of just like oh people like I know people watch the show but like I guess
Mhm.
like people really like the show. Um uh but it's also like I'm waiting for the moment when everyone gets their copy and suddenly has a lot of comments about some question that's in there like I feel like I'm going to get a deluge of just like Twitter comments like people are going to come be coming at me for like something in there that's like it's like hey I don't like this and it's with the show at least it's like a little bit of a trickle where it's like okay like there's only a couple questions per episode so you
Yeah.
get like a couple comments per
Mhm.
episode when it's like here's 500 questions going to a bunch of people at the same time it's like oh no this is going to be a thing isn't it but that's kind of what the show is all about so I can't complain too much.
Actually, the shit show board game has been
Yeah.
released. Um, But I find that interesting too because, especially games like Trivial Pursuit and stuff like that, there's a lot of faith in the questions that are written, and
Hmm.
there's so much time and energy. I don't think people truly understand the work that you have to put behind, even if it's 10, 15, 20 questions. That is a ton of work, on the
Yes.
research end, and just kind of like knowing, is this too hard or
Hmm.
is this too easy? Kind of how do you branch in there? Like, what's your process for being like, no, they're gonna get this too quickly, or wow, even I wouldn't have had a clue.
Totally. Yeah, it's really hard to judge because like you only know what you know, right? So trying to figure out like would someone, and a lot of times you're writing the questions, I don't necessarily know who's going to be the contestant on that show. So
Yeah.
it's not even like it's like I know so and so is going to know this. It's like I some mystery person a month from now is going to answer this. Like how hard is this going to be? So my usual approach to that is to one I'll try to have a couple of like uh a couple of like easier questions and a couple of like harder questions in there, um
Mhm.
just so that like I know there's like a little bit of a spread. Some things that are like easier questions will be like, well, this is just like a question about like the core like concept of the show or the book or something. Like even if you haven't read it but you're vaguely familiar with it, you might be able to like still know this. And then the harder questions, which are like deep cut trivia kind of things, it's just like it's like who knows. But the thing
Mhm.
is like you really can never predict like the number of times I put in something that's like this is an impossibly difficult question, but it's an interesting piece of trivia. So it's in here not because I think people will answer it correctly, but because I think it will lead to an interesting conversation afterwards. I've done that a ton of times, and there's frequently someone who's like just knows the answer, and it's like, well, I
Mhm.
you've shocked me. Great, I'm glad that you knew that. I wasn't expecting anyone to do that. Um, uh, and the other thing I'll try to do to like deal with the difficulty is like if there is something that is like this is so specific, like who's going to remember the specific name of this piece
Mhm.
of tech from this episode of this TV show or something like that. It's like wow, like you even if you watch the show you might not remember that. When I do things like that, I'll often try to when I'll make the wrong thing something that is also recognizable from a different thing.
Mm.
So it's like even if you don't know the one show you're talking about, you might be able to recognize the wrong thing from some other bit of expertise that you have. So it sort of gives you like
That's very
two
smart.
two doors, two ways into the question,
Mhm.
uh, depending on your knowledge base.
That's good. You kinda give them, like, a little bit of a lifeline where it's like, "Listen, even I know this is difficult, like, but here's your branch to kind of reel you in a little bit."
Absolutely. And like, people can totally guess their way into
Oh,
answers
yeah.
and we've and like I'll tell contestants before we start that's like, like if you even if like if you're able to find the thing that's wrong, like we'll work with that because they are like the part of the shows they're intentionally like really difficult questions and the show just isn't fun if it's just like what's the score line now halfway through the show 0-0-0 like everyone's miserable because no one's scoring. It's just like well like we're trying to have fun here so like I there's no reason for me to be like miserly with the points. They're
Mhm.
not worth anything. There's not even a prize at the end of the show, it's like I can be a little generous with the points and like keep the mood up.
Now, do you, this is another, off question. Do you I know some people don't like watching themselves on
Hmm.
their shows or, like, do you go back and watch I mean, I'm assuming you do, like, for questions and stuff like that just to reference and make sure, like, you haven't done anything, but do you, like do you kind of, like, self-criticize yourself being like, what am I doing? Like,
Oh,
why am
yeah,
I"
I hate watching myself. I despise it. I have gotten used to it by necessity, just because I'm actually included, but also like everything that we made at College Humor. When you were the writer of a piece, you were also like one of the producers. So
Mhm.
you would review rough cuts of the version and note them and make sure that it was like looking the way you wanted it to look. Um, which meant that you would have to review your performance all the time. Uh, and yeah, you notice all the things about yourself that you hate, whether it's like, hey, this is like, ah, God, I really didn't deliver that line well.
Mhm.
Or it's like, hey, editors can do a lot, especially like if you do good comedy editors like we had. An editor can't remove 10 pounds, like stuff like that. It's just like, God, I look like shit there. um, and you just sort of have to or like and especially with actually where it's all improvised and like sometimes
Mhm.
you'll run into moments it's like, oh, this feels a little awkward, we kind of stumble over this, and sometimes you can like cut out and cut around those moments, but sometimes you need them for the flow of show, and it's just like that's just a weird awkward moment that we're just gonna have to will just live forever on the internet. This is like me awkwardly figuring out how to transition from one thing to another. There's nothing you can do about it. So I have to review footage, but I avoid it as much as possible.
Understandable. Completely understandable. And it's good that you bring up college humor because it kind of transitions to my next question, which was, you worked your way up. If my research, you started in
Mhm.
sales rep, and then you worked your way up into a writing position. Like, kind of how, first off, how did you do that? Because
Yeah.
that in itself is, magical. But even going further, once you established yourself as a writer, kind of like what was your process there? So just lead me through college humor.
Yeah, so, like, it, so I started as a sales planner, which was basically like that was an entry level job where you're like helping the sales reps like put together decks to put ads on the website. Basically, it's
Yeah.
like to make the website a worse place. Is basically what it was doing. Um, and yeah, that sort of like that weird sort of like snaking my way like essentially what I did was like I was doing that for like a year, then moved over to the editorial department where I was writing like articles and
Hmm.
comics and things like that, and then moved to the video team, and then moved my way up through the video team, and so like this weird snaking path through multiple departments. And like I will say that that is something that was like I was maybe the last person to do something like that. Before me, like that was actually kind of common at College Humor that like
Yeah.
people would start at like you'd kind of come in through some like weird entry level job, and then you'd
Hmm.
sort of like y- you work your way up. And I think as College Humor got bigger and like that became a little less popular, but like a lot of like older cast members who are my friends, like my friend Owen Parsons, who used to work at college, like he started in the same job that I had as a sales planner.
Hmm.
Murph, I think, was working like the front desk for a while. I think like even Sarah Schneider, who was head writer on SNL for a while, like I think she started as either a sales planner or a front desk person. Like so like there was like a period of time where it was like there was this sort of culture at College Humor that was like, yeah, you, like come in wherever, like pitch ideas. Like if you can like prove yourself, like we'll
Hmm.
kind of as opportunities come up, like we'll move you up through the
Yeah.
ranks. Um, which was nice because uh, that I did feel like that doesn't exist in a lot of places, and even places like College Humor are a lot of them have kind of disappeared. This like weird a place where like I like sort of an idiot shortly out of college could be like, hey, I think I am funny. Can I have like a job? Like I'm not like just like put me in the environment. Like I'll be a sales
Yeah.
planner, but like I want to be in this
Hmm.
environment, and people being like, okay, yeah, we'll give you a chance. Those places are like even harder to find now than they were when I
Hmm.
started there. So um, uh, I mentioned that just because like sometimes people ask me, it's like, how can I do what you did? And it's like, I don't know if you can anymore. Like, I wish you could. It would be great if there
Yeah.
were this robust comedy middle class, but I don't know if that exists. Um, but yeah, I don't know exactly what it was that convinced them to like let me make the jump over from sales into editorial, which was like kind of like the big creative leap from like you're doing something uh, that is like that where you're not doing a lot of like creative writing that is public on the site to being like a very public creative person on the site.
Hmm.
I was doing stuff at the UCB at the time, like writing sketches and things. So and I knew that they were aware of that. Um, so they'd probably seen some of my other comedy stuff, and when a
Yeah.
position opened, we're like, okay, well we'll transfer you over.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly what it was. And then yeah, from there it was just a kind of like I'm just gonna keep working, writing stuff, making stuff, putting as much stuff out there, crawling my way up. Yeah.
It just reminds me of the Michael J. Fox film from way back when, where he starts in the lowly mail room and then just like slowly is like, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna do this, which was of course attempted to be parodied by "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" with Mac and Charlie, not to the much success. But I mean, I think it kind of first speaks volumes of you yourself, because I mean, there you had to have some sort of comedy in you. There had to have been some sort of talent to move you from position to position, and the idea of a comedy middle class is just hysterical to me.
I mean,
But
I think it is true though, like because the if you are someone who like I want to get into comedy,
mhm,
like when I got out of school, and was like, all right, I'm looking for jobs. Like there were a bunch of places like College Humor, and like some of these places still exist, but they like when I started, it was like they were making big big-ish like comedy videos, full sketches, like had like
Hmm.
TV departments and stuff. A lot of these places, like your Onions and College Humors and Cracked and Funny or Dies, and like these places that were like sort of like big-ish comedy names on the internet. They're sort of shadows of their former self now. Like they're still around in
Hmm.
some form, but like that was a they all felt like places that would take a chance on untested talent. Um,
Hmm.
versus like trying to get in like a TD writer's room with no experience right out of college. And like,
Yeah.
uh, it's hard. I think it is kind of a bummer that those places don't exist anymore. If you're someone who is trying to start out in comedy, it's like, well, this was a full-time job that paid me to do comedy for a little while without like a lot of experience, and um, I that should exist.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I mean, I'm 33 and I remember going from, the infancy of YouTube and,
Hmm.
just it was basically a word of mouth like this is really funny. Have you seen this? Like, in
Yeah.
college and in dorms and stuff like that. But even more so, like you said, with College Humor, Cracked, Funny or Die, stuff like that. uh, has our attention span possibly also with we're moving towards we saw like the transition of Vine and stuff like that where it was
Hmm.
literally you have this amount of time to be funny, like that's it. And then videos on TikTok, and we're just in this weird space where so much has happened so drastic and so quickly that you're right. I don't know if a College Humor or a Cracked or something along those lines can thrive, survive, as we've seen going forward in the future. But
Yeah. I mean.
you need the talent too. You really need the talent. And
Mhm.
again, it comes to you guys, and it comes to the writers, and it comes to the staff like you have on.
Yeah, I um I used to say like when I was at College Humor, like every year I've been here, the business model has changed completely, which is
Hmm.
like that sounds like an overstatement, but if you really think about the changes in the internet and like how fast the internet changes, like when I uh y- like remembering things, it's like, oh, College Humor existed before YouTube did. Like that's a weird thing to think about. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you would put videos on the site and people would go to the site, and like that's a different financial model than like, oh, I'm going to spread my videos on social media networks and hope that
Hmm.
like you get a chunk of that pie, like it's just the and also like uh, you know, College Humor and YouTube both existed before smartphones, which was like is also like weird to think about. And it's like, oh yeah, like the way you consume media when you're sitting at your desk at your computer, taking a break
Hmm.
from lunch or something like that, like you might be more willing to watch a 3 minute comedy video if you're just like out and about on the street and you're
Yeah.
waiting in line. You don't want to sit and watch a 3 minute video. You want to watch like if you want to laugh, you want to watch like a 30-second thing.
Yeah.
So like I don't think it speaks necessarily to any like change in like what has happened to our attention span or like anything like that, so much as it is like change in technology and like what people are looking for in different places, like
Hmm.
how people are consuming things on the internet, where it's all like it's like on your phone and it's social media networks instead of on your computer on websites, and like those are like really very different things when you get down to it.
And no, you're absolutely right. Especially consumption wise, seeing slowly the trickling of you know stuff onto Facebook and
Hmm.
that move, and you're like, what's happening here? What is this? And again, when you now look for a video or you look for any content, you're like, yeah, I'll go to YouTube. I'll see what's on there, and kind of like
Hmm.
that's my branch out. Um, so it's funny that like at your time at College Humor, you've experienced two things where of course in 2020, we're moving towards different media, and then the door shut. But also in general, like how you also experience the able to start in one position and then work your way up. So you kind of got that duality of it. So your time there, happy, sad, uh, what's like your consensus feeling kind of moving out?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking with someone else about this, and this hits a little bit on like stuff we've already talked about, but it like for like the big like zoom out like position for me is this sort of feeling of like what's like we hit like a weird bullseye in history where like uh, where you were able to have a full-time job making sketch comedy on the
Hmm.
internet, and that didn't exist a few years before when we were trying to find that job, and it probably doesn't really exist anymore and won't
No.
exist forever maybe. So this weird slice of history where like right place, right time, right age, right everything to like be able to do this. And uh like it really was a great job. Like, got to work with really good people, got a lot of creative freedom, and relatively stable as anything on the internet could be, and
Hmm.
more stable compared to most entertainment stuff. And it was like a it was like a good education. I know that sounds weird, but like when it was you kind of experienced like the whole entertainment industry in like a little bit of a microcosm where it's like here's what it's like to um you were just making you're writing and creating and putting out so much stuff that you got to learn things about the creative process that normally would take a very long time, where it's like what is the process of like reacting to people's reactions to the things you
Hmm.
make. If it takes you, if you make like one movie and it takes you forever to make that movie, like you learn that lesson at the very end, that like one time. If
Yeah.
you're putting out like 50 videos, like you can sort of be like, okay, there's enough like data points. You can be like, I know how to react to this. I know what to expect from this. And even stuff like the development process of like creating a show, and like you're going to make mistakes in all these things, and being able to make so many things that were so quick, you got to make so many mistakes so quickly that it was like, oh, I now have learned this thing. And
Hmm.
yeah, I had to fail kind of publicly, but the stakes were fairly low. It wasn't like I had like you know a
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar box
Yeah.
office that a movie that I was in charge of writing, like some big blockbuster thing. It's like, no, you're writing like a silly sketch about farts or whatever. And but like the lessons you take from that, you can absolutely apply to like other kinds of writing. So
Hmm.
um it I think like I my time there was very valuable, and I met some really great people there. I was glad to have it, and I'm also like excited to be moving on to other things now. So yeah.
Better and brighter, as we always say. And
Hmm.
you know what? You eventually went into bio anyway because you did so many different experiments with videos and you had to see the results in the end. So,
Yeah.
really, I think it was a win win for you because you double majored in, comedy writing and bio. Uh, so, getting back to the idea of the sketches that you're, currently making, have you been more of a writer, more of an actor? Kind of where does your loyalty lie, or is it just right dead middle? I'm okay with either.
Yeah, no, I've always considered myself a writer first, and I've kind of been like an actor by necessity, where um, like I like the time, being able to take the time to like really make like a joke work and craft a thing and create a world if you're doing something that is like a little bit speculative.
Hmm.
um and I like a little bit of the anonymity you get from being a writer, where it's like, oh, you can sort of just like create this thing and hide a little bit. But being at College Humor, we hit at a certain point in the company's history was sort of like, well, from now on, if you're a writer, you're also an actor. You're going to be in the videos. And
Hmm.
I'd done some acting uh, I'd done some like improv stuff and acting in high school and college and stuff like that. Real like minor things. Like I was comfortable on stage and I was comfortable performing, but it was sort
Yeah.
of like, this is a this is like this isn't where like my heart lies. um and Yeah, it's been strange that it's like I to look at me like you'd probably think it was a 50-50 split, or even that it was like weighted more towards acting. But yeah, like the writing stuff is where I'm really trying to focus.
Especially coming from someone who kind of feels the same way, who self-criticizes everything that he's in, and
Yeah.
does not enjoy watching himself. Kind of seeing yourself and be like, "Ah, you could have done that better." And "Oh, why do you sound like that? Is that our voice? Is that our voice?" But it's a testament to you as well, the fact that you are just you're good at it. Like, you're able to. I mean, I could come on and say you should stick to writing, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to. Like, you do bring a presence. So, and especially with actually, like, just to have some sort of innocuous host who's just like, but you like kind of bring this air to you that really helps it itself, and kind of lends credence to the show, and kind of also draws on the viewers, because we're like, oh yeah, it's that host that you enjoy watching. Like, so there's kudos on that. But kind of in a roundabout way, if we sat 2011 starting at College Humor, Mike Trapp, what would you say to him?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for your comments on the hosting, because I do think that was like, I think hosting specifically was like a skill that I had to learn, because it's very different from hosting is very different from acting. Like, even though like they're both this sort of like performing
Mhm,
thing, um, uh, yeah, the skills you need to be a host, like it's a lot of improv and thinking on your feet, but it's also um, like learning how uh to be like a host in like the in any other sense of the word. Like, it's like, hey, you're coming into my space,
mhm,
this is my space, but you should feel as comfortable as possible, and I am really here to help you shine as brightly as you can. And
mhm,
being able to like be able to find that line between like, I am the owner of this space, but I'm going to make you feel like you are, is like, it's hard to find that energy, and I certainly like floundered with it a little bit in the first
mhm.
couple episodes. But yeah, you start to find that thing. To get to your actual question of like sitting down me from 2011, I think the big thing that and this is kind of just top of mind from stuff that's going on in my life right now, but is this uh, would be this sort of insist to I would tell young me to stop looking for permission, um,
Mm,
uh, which uh, which is to say that I think that a lot of writers and um, a lot of writers, perhaps in my experience, like come from a sort of like overachievy kind of background, where it's like, oh yes, I'm going to like that's sort of the straight A student, like I get my
yeah.
assignments done, I do the things
Type
like,
A, dum dum dum
yes,
dum. Yeah.
exactly. And it can be hard for those kinds of people going into entertainment, because like there isn't a clear almost every other career, there's kind of a clear path. It's like, you do these steps, you do good at those
Mhm,
steps, you move on to the next step. And that doesn't exist in a lot of entertainment. It's much more chaotic, which is part of the reason why College Humor felt so comforting to me, because it was like, oh, you're here. There's kind of a pathway here. You can like move through the
mhm,
ranks, and you can like sort of like, you prove yourself, you do well, you can keep moving up. But with that comes a very like defensive position, and I don't mean defensive in like the sort of like, yeah, like how dare you, way, but you're constantly on in this frame of mind where it's like, I'm going to do a thing, and then I'm going
mhm.
to wait for someone to tell me that it was good, or I'm not going to do a thing because I'm waiting for someone to tell me I'm allowed to do that thing.
Ah,
And so much of uh, so much of like success in in this industry, it seems, comes more from the people who are just like, well, I'm not going to wait for anyone to tell me that I can make this thing. I'm just going to make the thing, and
mhm.
I'll make a million things, and someone will see one, and they'll
Yeah.
like it, and that will be good. Or I'm not going to wait for I like I don't need to wait for the millions of strangers on the internet to tell me this is good. Like, I
Mhm,
will, if like, I'll get feedback from friends and stuff, but like, I'm going to trust my judgment a little bit. Um, and that sort of that being able to like have like a little bit more confidence to just sort of like do the thing, jump into it, make as much as possible, and don't wait for someone to tell you you're good enough to make it, is a difficult thing to do, but I think a necessary thing to do.
which definitely ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. That's I
Yes.
mean that credence itself lends to so many other things, and it's kind of what separates sometimes people who are going to make it and people who unfortunately aren't going to make it, because it's like taking that boldness too.
Yeah,
um
well, it's also like some of it is like putting yourself in the position of like, okay, well, who are the gatekeepers here? Like the people that you are waiting to open the gates for you, the people who you are waiting to say like, yes, you're good enough, you can come do this
hmm
job, you can do this thing. Like, who are those people? And a lot of times, those people are like they are terrified of making a bad decision, or as terrified of making a bad decision as you are. Like they don't want to put invest in someone who they're not sure of. They don't
yeah.
want to open the gates for someone's like they don't want to feel like they've made a mistake. So if you come up to these people and be like, "Am I good? Am I funny enough? Will you let me? Am I good enough?" Like
Please,
they're
papa,
going,
please.
yeah, they're going to say, "Well, it's like, well, you don't seem like you are sure, so I'm
Yeah.
going to say no." Um, but if you're able to like stroll up to those people and be like, "Hey, cool, like I'd love to get through that gate." If nothing
hmm
else, they have to take a moment to be like, "Well, who are you that you're trying to do this?" And
yeah.
it's hard to like trying to find that balance between like what is like stupidly confident and what is like where's confidence, where's humility, like when are you being like overconfident and when are you being like too defensive. It's so hard to find that ground, to find like the middle area where it's like this is the right place to be. But ultimately, like if you find that your humility is stopping you from creating things, then it's like that's a
hmm
problem because you need to be making the stuff.
yeah. That over end of being overconfidence where it's like, I'm gonna wrestle a bear. Like that's I think that is kind of the peak
Mhm.
of no, no, not at all. That
Well, like
shouldn't be done.
I was always afraid of being like uh being the person who is like, who's the gonna like stroll up to some like high level executive and be like, "Hey, I'm pretty hot shit. Like you should hire me for this." And like and like for them to look at and be like, "You're nobody. Who are you? Get out of here." And like being forced to confront like that I think, which like certainly can happen, like especially if you're like really young and you have nothing to show for it. But that's why it's like all the more important. Like, well, you have to have something to show for it. Like,
Yeah.
if you stroll up to someone and be like, "Hey, I'm hot shit," like check it out. Like more often than not, they're not going to say like, "Get out of here!" Like, "How dare you? Who do you think you are?" They're going to say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you're hot shit.
Yeah.
Show me what's so hot about you." And like, you best
hmm
be prepared to show them what's like if you're gonna like you have to be able to put your money where your mouth is.
Oh, absolutely. And kind of branching on, and this is going in a different direction.
Totally.
Might as well. Branching off of, you brought up the idea of gatekeeping, and our site primarily is all about kind of making everything accessible, like I said
Mhm.
at the beginning. And actually, my interpretation, it pokes fun at the nerd culture, and that that pushing the glasses up and being, well, actually,
Yeah.
Megatron was voiced in this episode, that sort of thing. Do you ever worry that kind of it sometimes is doing the opposite, or it's reinforcing, the actually people of the world? Like, do you ever have that fear in the back of your mind?
Yeah, and then especially when we started, when it was like, if all you were seeing was like the title and the premise, like if you don't know what it is, like you could actually get the feeling that's like it's like, oh, this is going to be, um, like a bunch of snide, snarky jerks just like cutting each other down, and so like I very actively try to fight against that tone, like when I'm hosting the show, um,
hmm
but because yeah, I think that is like a huge uh, uh, potential problem and like one that I've thought a lot about. Um, the I think like some of the things like that I do to try to get around that is, one, someone is just like in the hosting style and like and the show construction itself is just being like again like reminding people it's like this isn't really about the questions, like
No.
this is an excuse for you to either like talk about something you love or discover something
hmm
new, and we're just going to sort of like indulge in that a little bit. um and some of it too is like, I think that sort of like, so the worst version of this sort of actually habit is gatekeeping, right? Like the worst possible
hmm
version of it is where someone is like great, I'm going to use my knowledge as a weapon against you. I'm going to prove that I am stronger and I'm going to cut you down and not allow you in here until you can prove your might against
Yeah.
me, like nerd barbarian. You must fight the strongest person in the room before you're,
Mhm.
like that's the worst possible version of it. And I think there are some people who do like enter this behavior with that mindset. But I think there's also some people who will do this where it comes, it's not coming from a place of aggression, but more of a place of like I am so excited to talk about this thing. I've learned this thing that is very specific that no one else gives a shit about. And now that I have learned that, you are talking about this, like I want to, like I was surprised when I learned this, and I want to share it with you in this weird way. And so it, to me, some of it, the show is also like, it's like, well, okay, if you felt that like actually impulse, but it's like,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, this is not necessarily welcome. It's like I'm building like a paintball arena here, right?
Yeah.
Like we now know we know what the rules are coming in here. Like if I'm walking down the street and I hit you with a paintball, it's like what the hell, man? Like what are you doing? But like if we're all coming in, it's like, hey, we're all gonna hit each other with paintballs. It's going to hurt a little bit, but it's going to be
Mhm.
fun. And we know that none of this is meant with any kind of malice. And this is like we're creating a safe space for us to just wail on each other. And like that, giving that permission, I think is like people sort of like that, and like they know since they're braced to get hit and they're braced to like get in some good ones themselves. Um,
Mhm.
it makes it does, I think, successfully subvert this thing that's like, well, this is a toxic kind of damaging thing, and makes it a
Yeah.
place where that we can indulge in our worst behaviors in a way that feels acceptable.
And kind of like leading on to that, and just saying you have these very great guests who are like, yeah, of course I know all the original members of the X Force, but I also know who gives a shit. Like that's
Yeah.
I walk that very fine line at times. But definitely, you do have both sides of that where they know it's all about the fun of it more than anything.
Yeah.
And I can just remember, I like off the top of my head, and the image is fading a little bit. Someone being like, "Take that, people who bullied me in high school," like after correctly answering a question. But that's really is. I mean, the heart of actually is the, like I said, poking fun about, like, yes, we're here to answer these absolutely ridiculous at times questions, but it's also for friends hanging out and kind of just having a good time.
Yeah. I think
Um,
it helps too that like in my role as host, there's like the weird power imbalance there is that like it's like, well, I am the host. I am here, I'm
mhm,
asking the questions, but ultimately, like I'm here to be your punching bag. Like
yeah,
I am the one who's getting corrected every time. Like so like there is this like weird, like this kind of fun power imbalance where like if everything's working well, if you're scoring points, like I'm the one who's being corrected, I'm the one who's being cut down to size, and
yeah.
you, the contestants, are the ones who are victorious and winning,
Mhm.
and like I've given you permission to do that, so it hopefully feels feels like supportive and fun instead of like it's like, are we bullying here, what's going on?
And you spoke to it in the beginning. It's not a fun episode when it's 000 and there's
Yeah.
like three questions left, and you're like, wow, what happened here? Like this is not enjoyable.
Sure, because yeah, because it screws up that power imbalance. It's like I'm supposed to be the punching bag, but if no one else is
Mhm.
scoring points, then it's like, why is the punching bag winning? Like this is that's not how this is supposed to be. And then like that's when like it feels like weird and awkward. So yeah, like definitely try to like make sure people are having fun and getting points and beating me up as best they can.
And in your your hosting role, something that I wanted to bring up was an offhand remark of the late Alex Trebek. We learned that he was far more comfortable in jeans and a t-shirt than a suit.
Mm,
You wear a suit every episode, I'm like 90%, 99% sure.
yeah.
Have you ever been like, not really into wearing a suit today. Like, is it okay if maybe I do, comfy Friday or something like that?
Yeah, I hate wearing formal clothes. I absolutely hate. I hate it more than I think most people who don't like wearing formal clothes. Um, uh, but some of it is too like my first couple. I had like I had a job in high school where I had to wear a tie. My first job out of college, I had to wear a tie. I just
Mhm.
hated it. Um, uh, I found it really uncomfortable and just this annoying, useless thing. I had to like, and they're expensive. Like, it's like, why do I have to buy all these ties for this job? Like, it's like this is so. I was like, I don't have any money. Why are you making me do this? Uh, so I really really hate it. But like when we were first sort of like setting the tone of the show, it was sort of like, it's like, well, what should the host wear? And there was this feeling, it's like, well, as the host, you should maybe like have a little bit of a sense of like, well, I am going to be in a slightly like different space from everyone else. And the
Mhm.
simplest solution is like wear a jacket, wear a tie,
Yeah.
wear a wear a collared shirt. I will say that I keep it a little bit casual where I don't wear, I think maybe the first season I wore a full suit. I've like since been like, I'm gonna wear a jacket and I'm gonna wear jeans and um uh and yeah, and there's still like I still do wish it's like I really hate doing these ties because you also have to like you have to swap them out because I wear a different tie every episode, but we'll usually shoot
Mhm.
like 4 episodes, 3 or 4 episodes in a day. So
Yeah.
it's just like between episodes, it's just like, like undoing the tie, putting the next one on. Just a pain in the ass. It's like I didn't even like wearing one, and now I got to wear four.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that it like now it's just sort of like established that like this is what it is. I feel like if I
Yeah.
suddenly came in and I was like just wearing a hoodie and tattered jeans, people would be like, "What's wrong with Mike? Like, you going through something?"
Yeah.
So I just sort of accept it as like the uniform for the show.
And I was just gonna say, you showing up, you've got like a scraggly beard. You're like, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm just saying, it's just not gonna happen today,
bags under my
guys.
eyes, tousled hair.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, something happened.
Slowly but surely, first episode, no jacket, second, no tie, third,
Yeah.
no shirt. You're just like, this is happening. That's it's upsetting for you that your hatred of something has kind of been personified in your position. But
Yeah.
I think too, it like actually you're absolutely right. It separates you kind of from the guests, and it definitely leads up like, yeah, like you are the punching bag, like you are the
Yeah.
host, like this is the lead. He's got to wear a suit and tie. Now, do you have any input whatsoever in terms of, or do you have like a wardrobe person who's like, you're gonna wear this with this and this matches, or do you feel that you have an eye for style?
I do not have an eye for style. I'm terrible with style. I'm I'm like a step away from doing the like Steve Jobs. Like I'm just gonna buy the same thing and wear. I'm gonna be like a cartoon. I'm gonna be like Doug or something. It's like I wear the same thing every day, so I don't have to think about it. Like that's the level I'm at. Like a plain black T-shirt is great for me. Um, uh, if for actually like I truly do have a uniform. Like
Hmm.
I have a jacket that like I think I wore it on some early episode. And it's just like I'm just gonna wear this jacket for every
Yeah.
episode.
Hmm.
And a plain white colored shirt. The only thing that changes, and some of this was to like help deal with continuity and not have like like a huge rack of wardrobe changes, was like
Yeah.
we'll swap out the ties and like we'll make it kind of
Hmm.
we'll do some fun tie thing, and that'll make it a little bit different each time, but we won't have to think too hard about it. Um, and for those people who've asked me, it's like where are your ties from? It's like I don't actually own like that is like that is like a pure production thing. It's like cool,
Yeah.
we'll buy the ties, maybe we'll
Hmm.
return them, get our money back. um, yeah, there's so and there I just like usually at the start of a season they'll be like, here's
Yeah.
12 ties. Which one do you want to wear? It's like let's go with that one.
Target has joined the chat. Returning
Yep.
what? How many times are
Yeah.
you
What? How
bringing
many
back?
times have you returned? Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Kind of coming to our close of our interview, I just wanted to give you a moment to kind of talk about anything that you have upcoming or anything you personally want to promote, talk about, kind of give you this time to kind of just be like, this is what I got going on. This is what I'm excited for. So anything kind of upcoming for you?
Yeah. The short, sad answer is kind of no. I mean, like, of course, you can watch. I'm actually on Dropout, which is the a subscription channel that College Humor launched. If you want to see like brand new, up to date ones, back episodes are going up every week on uh the actually YouTube channel, which I think is at the username is ch2 because it was built off of an old College Humor channel. So if you want to check those out, you can do that there. Uh, and there's a thing I can't talk about that hopefully will come through, but it's like it's sort of like waiting to see what happens with that. Um, but beyond that, a lot of the stuff that I've got going on is like are in these weird like they're scripts that will maybe happen. There's jobs that'll maybe
Hmm.
get. It's all of these things that are like I'm either not allowed to talk about it or it might not actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, but um, uh, but yeah, like hopefully that changes soon. But you know, you can you can follow me at Twitter on Twitter at Mike W Trapp. Sometimes I'll post weird jokes there and things, and um, I'll have more to promote at some point. But for right now, it's like thankful for everyone who's watched the show and supported the Kickstarter and watched any of the stuff that I've made because yeah, like. Uh, you'd never want to feel like you're just throwing something out into the void. So like being able to like you know like sometimes people like recognize me on the street or feel weird about
Hmm.
like sending me messages, and it's like if you're being polite, like I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's great to know that people are engaging with the stuff and liking it. And, like
Hmm.
yeah, thank you to everyone who has.
And to everyone who was sending him DMs about questions that they were not
Yes.
happy about, maybe cut that out because actually he doesn't give a shit.
We don't
So
get I don't actually get too many of that. And some of it was like we sort of we had to stop doing this for production reasons, but early on like I would like ask people to be like, yeah, like I'm certain I've made a mistake. You can
yeah.
and like if you
Hmm.
have a correction, we'll feature it on the episode. Um, and some of that is like a little bit. It's like people are going to do this anyway, so I might as well just
Yep.
like give them permission. Like it's like you're going to do it. It's like I'm aware of that. I'm going to lean into the joke and like let's do that. But I don't actually get as much of that. I think because people do realize like how sort of silly and tongue in cheek this
Hmm.
is. Where it's like if they were to actually do that without permission, that it would sort of feel like, wait, is this? Am I
Hmm.
doing what you're making fun of? And so I think there's like there on the Dropout Discord, there's like a specific channel that is like, hey, if we want to pick apart questions, like here's the place to go do that. That's like separate from the main I'm actually channel where it's like, yeah, if we want to talk about these topics and the show and stuff, go here. And if you just want to be like, I'm going to be pedantic and pick apart this question, there's a whole separate channel for people to just pick things apart.
And that was the word that came to mind. I was like, what pedantry is
Yeah.
going on here? And I can only imagine the firestorm that occurs in that Discord channel. I will have to check that out. So yeah, everybody, I encourage you all to check out actually, like our guest over here, Mike Trapp just said. So thank you to our guest, Mike Trapp. It was an absolute pleasure. You can find him on Twitter at Mike W. Trapp. For GateCrashers, I'm RJ Durante. Follow me at ArgRJ, that is ARGHRJ, and our site at GateCrashers Pod. Tune in next time. Thank you. Mike, it has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.